Welcome, everybody. We're going to have a little bit of conversation today about personal finance. I know it's not something that is talked about very much in today's society, but it's a very big interest of me that I recently found. And I'd just like to share some basic information about debt, controlling debt, and staying out of debt. So we're going to begin with the basics of how debt works, and then we're going to dive into getting out of debt, and then we're going to wrap it all up with some tips on just how to stay out of debt. Now everybody understands the basics of debt. You borrow money, you make payments, there's interest on that money, and you end up paying back more than you actually borrowed. That's pretty simple. What many people don't understand about debt is that once you start, it's easy to landslide out of control. It's once you put a little bit of stuff on credit card, you start with, well, I have this, but I really want this, and I can just put it on credit. Someone will just pay it back slowly. And that can eventually end up just snowballing out of control. People end up with multiple credit cards, high interest credit cards, loans that end up having to go to pay off other credit cards. It's just a real quick way to snowball and landslide out of control. And then once that happens, it's a controlling factor in your life. You're always trying to figure out how to pay back that debt and get everything gathered up and paid for, and trying to make sure that you have enough to pay everything off and live. Now, once you end up with that, it's usually a good plan to try and get out of debt. One of the best ones I've found, the best plans that I've found, is from Dave Ramsey. He calls it his debt snowball. You start with your lowest payoff amount. It doesn't matter what your interest rates are. You start with your lowest payoff amount, and you get that one paid off. And then you take the money that you use to pay that off, your minimum payment plus whatever extra you have to pay off the next one. And then you just snowball everything in until you have a large amount going extra onto your largest payments, or onto your largest loans and credit card debt. So with the debt snowball, that helps you start with small and working your way to your large. That way you actually can see a progression. If you try to start out with your largest ones making your minimum payments, it would take an extended period of time to get all of that paid off and all of your debt gone. Now, once you have all of your debt paid off, one of the best ways to stay out of debt is to start an emergency fund. So you take 6 to 9 months of cost of living money. This is another part of Dave Ramsey's actual 7-step plan. He calls it his baby steps. But once you end up with everything paid off, you start with a 6 to 9 month emergency fund. That way, if something were to happen and you lost a job, and you would be able to pay your living expenses, it's not 6 to 9 months of total paychecks. It's 6 to 9 months of how much groceries cost plus how much mortgage is, and so on and so forth. Basically just what you need to live and survive for 6 to 9 months. Once all that's paid for, you should be able to cash roll everything else from there. And you would be able to hopefully have learned throughout that debt is not a good thing to have. Excuse me. And that you would be able to either save up the cash for it or have the cash available out of a paycheck to basically cash flow everything else, and then you don't ever have to worry about trying to pull loans or get loans ever again. So we're going to sum everything up real quick. We covered how debt works other than the basics. We covered that it's real quick to get into a landslide situation where you start with a little bit of debt and it grows because you want something now and you're trying to cover all that. Then we went into paying off all your debt, starting with the smallest and snowballing those payments into one big one as you pay your small payment or your small debt off into your larger debt. You start with that. And then staying out of debt is just have an emergency fund in case something happens. That way you don't have to go into debt for an emergency. And then you just try and cash roll everything else. So hopefully that gives some people some good tips for their own personal finance and hopefully everything, if there are any other questions, that you'll be able to research or ask somebody who could help you with those. So thank you very much for your time.